So, namaste, welcome to Satsang today. So, one of perhaps the most important question we'll ever ask ourselves is, why am I here? Or what's the real meaning of life? What's the purpose of my existence? What is the highest thing I can do with my existence? And really, those kind of questions are what we come to answer in satsang, to find out first theoretically, mentally, and then to begin to live as that, to begin to have the experiential knowing of the highest goal of human existence, of the highest purpose of existence. And what really is that? Why are we actually here? Why are we participating not only in this satsang, but in our spiritual journey and in life in general? What do we, how can we orient our life and perhaps even our awakening to be the most productive? What is the reason that we're actually spending this time when we could be doing other things? And it's that really that I want to address in this satsang this morning, really what the purpose of satsang is and how we can orient ourselves towards that to facilitate a much more rapid seeing of what we actually are. Most of us come to satsang, to our spiritual journey, and even to our life itself, our human existence, all that entails, from a sense that we are limited, flawed human beings, and that we are evolving, becoming better, becoming more compassionate, for example, more loving, more clear on what we are. And then at some point, we find out that there is a different way to live, and we may, hear about awakening, enlightenment, and we may begin to pursue that in whichever way we do. And all of this is great. It's going to lead us to have a better life than we perhaps could have if we only thought that we were a separate human being. But there is an even higher way. And I'm not going to say the word better, it's just higher, it's just less limited, to come to your satsang, to come to this satsang, and even to come to your entire existence from. And that is, what if you are already what you're seeking to become or to realize or to achieve? What if you already are this divine love expressing itself as a human being? What if already that's where you're starting from, although perhaps we didn't know it for quite some time? How would that change your view of yourself? How would that change your perspective? How would that change how you interact in satsang? How would that change how you interact in your relationships, in your life? How would it change the orientation of your spiritual progress? Instead of being a human being that is trying to strive towards some ideal of perfection that we see in the future, some kind of understanding that when I get to a certain point in my evolution, then I'll begin to mirror or manifest these divine qualities that I've seen in other beings. Instead of that perspective, as good as that is, what if we can come to see that right now, in this moment, you are already absolutely as much of the self as you are ever going to be. No matter how that is appearing, no matter which way it is manifesting, no matter what particular issues and challenges you may have going on in your life right at this moment, that is just where your body and mind are at in terms of expressing itself. This is the self expressing itself as a human being. What if you weren't actually flawed and working towards some perfection? What if you were already right now in this moment, that perfection expressing itself in every which way it can, just because it can? How would that affect you then if you were already this perfection, this divine love, if you were already the source of all existence right now, and there is nothing at all you could ever do, be, or become or have that was going to make you more the self, that divine love, the source of all of this, than you are in this moment right now? Wouldn't that kind of, if you let that in to your heart, if you let that into your mind, if you let that into your life, that seeing, wouldn't it change everything for you? Wouldn't it change while you're even listening to this? What if there was nothing at all you could do to be any more the self than you are right now already and have always been? What if that was even perhaps the first purpose of our awakening, the first major seeing in our awakening? That no matter where my humanity is at, no matter where my relationships are at, no matter where my career, no matter where my meditation takes me to, that I can be doing those things, participating in those things, because as a facilitation to the unfolding expression of the self that I am, this divine source of love, the source of creation, that which fuels the universe. It's a very different way of coming towards our satsang and coming into our spiritual practice. We're not trying here to make something perfect that is imperfect. We're instead coming from that place that is already as good as it's going to ever get right now in this moment. And it would have to completely change your whole reason for doing anything at all, especially your spiritual practice. What if your spiritual practice then became a place where you can, your satsang, your awakening, where you can come to recognize what you actually are already, right now, right here, right as you are? What if instead of looking for some outer set of circumstances to confirm, we simply switch to recognizing these outer set of circumstances are the divine expression of love. The love that is so free to express itself in every which way it can. Every which way. Including and not limited to your life right now as it is. Your seeing, your meditation, your inquiry, however far you've delved into that is just however far you've got. But there is no seeing you can have, nothing you can let go of, nothing that you can step into that's going to make you any more the source of creation than you already are in this moment. You just kind of let that hit you. If you let that hit you, it's going to change your reason for being in satsang. And it becomes more about a seeing and an allowing and an unfolding, rather than a kind of struggling to get to some legendary finish line, some mythical set of characteristics or outer worldly experiences or inner worldly experiences that we see as the awakened state. What if the awakened state is right here in this moment, right now, appearing as the moment itself, this shared moment that goes on forever, and exactly where you are right now? What if these words are the self expressing itself? What if your very next judgmental thoughts about yourself and your lack of progress are the self expressing itself? What if a feeling of unworthiness inside you is the self expressing itself as this unique human experience right now? What if the air you're breathing right now isn't really air? What if it is the self? What if the food you ate for breakfast this morning or whenever is not really food at all? It is the divine expression of love. It is also another way you're appearing. You are appearing this divine expression of love, as I'm calling it today, although it really doesn't have a name. Or we could call it you. What if that was appearing right now as this moment and everything arising in it, including your body, including your thoughts, whether they're good, bad, or ugly, including your emotions, whether they're positive or negative, including any insights and epiphanies, including your relationships. It's expressing itself as your career. It's expressing itself, this divine love, as you, this unique and wonderful individual that is already as absolutely the self, this divine love, as you could ever be. There would have to, if you just spend even a few moments contemplating, pondering on this, it'd have to reorient your entire existence if you let it. What if you're here not to fix something that's imperfect inside yourself, but what if you're here to recognize that divine essence that you are, right here and right now, appearing as everything that makes you you? What if you're here to be a living example of what this divine love can appear as a human being? What is it like to be this human expression without any sense of being flawed or imperfect, and also completely allowing this unfolding expression that is your life? If we take any arbitrary moment in time, if we take this moment right now on the clock and say, okay, let me look at my life right now, let me look at my flaws, my traits, my personality, my characteristics, how far I've come in my awakening, what I would like to improve upon, what I would like to let go of, what I would like to get more of. If we took that right now, a snapshot of your life, we would always find a reason to say that we're not that. We could always find a reason to say that I'm not already this self, if we look at it like that. But if we went 10 years ahead and looked at your life 10 years from now, it would still be the same, wouldn't it? It would still be something that we could improve upon, that we could allow an even greater unfolding expression. This is really a different way of looking at your life. If we take a seed and plant it in the ground, and then after a little while it begins to appear through the soil as a small shoot, and then a couple of weeks, months later, it's a sapling, it's really growing, It's beginning to get some leaves and starting to really look like a plant. And then later still, it begins to bloom and blossom, and it has these beautiful flowers. And at first there's only one, and then there's several. And for quite some time, it's just appearing as this glorious color. And then later still, some of these flowers begin to die off and the petals are dropping off, and some of them are withered, and some of the leaves of the plant have got holes in them. Some of the leaves are turning brown. And then eventually, fast forward to, it is what the rest of the world would call dead. It's just this remnant of what it used to be. Is it any less that plant, that beautiful thing at those stages of its evolution? Is it any less beautiful as the seed as it is when it's blooming? Is it any less beautiful when it's withered and has begun to turn into a different form, begun this recycling process that occurs in nature? Can we see it as a beautiful, unique expression, no matter which stage it's at in its unfolding? Do we have to just limit ourselves and say it's only beautiful when it's fully grown and in full bloom? And can we perceive our own existence this way too? Can you be a beautiful expression of the divine love, being conscious of its own source and its own reality, its own nature? And can we begin to perceive everyone else from that place too, that they are also an expression of this divine radiance, this divine love? And wherever it is at in that unique expression, however far it's come, whether it's recognized itself clearly and is completely radiating that seeing to everything it encounters as that human being, or whether it's completely oblivious to its real nature and really fully believes itself to be only a human being, or whether it's somewhere in between those two, whether it's interested in realizing the self, or whether it thinks that the self, God, doesn't exist and it's just something made up to comfort people. Can we treat all of life, our own life first and foremost, and everything else then we begin to encounter from this perception of fullness, of wholeness? And what happens when we do? Right now, in this moment, it's as good as it's going to get to recognize the self appearing as you, as all of this, as every single expression it's capable of, which is infinite expression. And just like we wouldn't judge the flower, the plant, by the absence or presence of the flowers, the blooming, we're also not going to judge ourselves based on the absence or the presence of compassion, love, understanding, wisdom, or fear, hate, judgment, jealousy, all of those things. It is not better with those first set of qualities. It's not more the self. It's not more the divine expression of love when it emanates those qualities as a human being. And it isn't any less the self when it's living in fear and confusion and ignorance of its real nature. That those things simply don't exist in reality, meaning we can't really say that just because I'm feeling a particular way more often, that I'm actually getting somewhere, that I'm actually getting closer to being the self, actually. When a human being begins to perceive its own nature and is willing to see a divine essence right here in this moment, manifesting as all of this, appearing as every possibility, from the highest to the lowest, perhaps better said, from the most limited expression of human love to the highest unlimited expression of love. And we simply lose our ability to say better or worse, good or bad, just more or less limited. And we begin to perceive all of creation from that particular viewpoint, that we're no longer willing to judge ourselves as not being the self yet in this moment. Recognizing this moment and everything that appears in it right now cannot be any more divine than it already is. That the very next being that you encounter is Krishna, actually. Krishna may be very confused about his real nature as the next being that you see, or it may be that he's very, very clear and open and understanding of its real nature. It does not make him any less that. But if every person you encountered from this point onwards, you were willing to see that divine essence in them, especially when you look in the mirror, that where you are right now in your human unfolding, your life, your awakening of satsang, is just where you're at on this ever unfolding, ever moving, changing, three-dimensional sculpture of love that is you. You are the source of this love, and this love appearing as form, constantly changing our thoughts, our emotions, our seeings, our revelations, our understandings, our insights, our relationships, our family, our life in its entirety, everything that could ever happen to you in your entire human existence is simply the continuing unfolding of this divine expression as it becomes ever more conscious of itself. And as it becomes ever more conscious of itself as a human being, that begins to have a healing effect upon the body, upon the mind, upon the experience, upon the perception. The perception becomes clear of what it really is, what you actually are now already and could never not be. And then it begins to heal how you see everyone else completely. It doesn't mean that you want to be best friends with everyone else. There are some expressions of the self we'd all rather spend time with, and some we would not prefer to, and that's fine. That's how everything moves. Naturally, we're going to gravitate towards more conscious expressions of the divine love. But we don't have to do that by pushing away anything. What happens when we embrace this way of seeing ourselves and life is that we lose the ability to say that anything about ourselves or anyone else is wrong. It's simply limited. And it's simply a symptom of what happens when the Buddha is unconscious of its real nature. That it really isn't separate from anything at all, ever. That it is appearing as the entire universe itself, right now, already. That divine love is so loving that it allows complete and total expression. Every expression possible in the infinite variety and potentiality is going to occur, has occurred, will occur. And that is one of those is your life right now, you. And although we may, as we embrace this, begin to embody the qualities that we've been seeking more and more, less and less self-judgment and judgment of others, more compassion, more wisdom, more love, more energy, more patience, more abundance of all forms. It doesn't mean that right now, if we're not embodying those as yet, as fully as we'd like to, that there is anything less than divine about us. And as we look around the world, if there are beings that are not embodying this at all, in fact, seeming the opposite, that they are any less also this divine love expressing itself. How free would that divine love be? How unlimited would it be if it said, this is the way you should appear in human shape. This is what you should look like. And this is what you shouldn't look like. It's absolutely free in this moment to appear whichever way it wants. And the more it begins to recognize that, the more it begins to radiate these qualities. So our satsang can be a place where this divine love, when it's expressing itself as a human being, where it has the capacity to look and recognize its own source, which you can't do in any other species on earth, then it's a place where it can come to look in the mirror and see what it actually is already right now. That even if we need to, we want to change some aspects of our body, of our mind, of our personality, that we can do that much easier. We can allow a higher potential to manifest when we start from the place of wholeness already, when we start from that place of completion, where we start from the place where there never was anything actually imperfect. And the reason for this human incarnation then becomes very, very different. Instead of appearing as this body and mind to try to fix what's gone wrong, to try to redeem ourselves, to try to make up for something, to try to reach the perfect self again, or something like that. Instead of waiting for our awakening to fix us, to make us better, to make us whole, to make us complete, we start off as that completion, that wholeness, and see that we've perhaps manifested this body and mind to begin to heal our misperceptions about ourselves, about the world, about everything. And that starts with your own individual, unique expression. And then you can begin to allow that to spread outwards, to see everyone else, to give them that freedom also, to be whatever they are in this moment completely. You're never going to be more the self than you are already right now. It doesn't mean you stop doing spiritual practice or meditation. It just means the reason for doing it is completely different. Instead of waiting for some mythical moment in the future where awakening happens to you by some mysterious power and then begins to kind of reorient your life, but what that moment is right now in this seeing. I am already that. You are already that. There is nothing that is not that. How does that change your orientation then to life, to satsang, to awakening? Can it then become just an ever fuller blooming of the flower that is you, rather than trying to desperately patch something together or fix it up, or being a DIY project and hoping to one day assemble the full thing as it's shown on the picture and not quite getting there, and a few screws being left over that you can't actually find anywhere to put. It's a different way to come to satsang, and I'd just like to show you that already you are what you're seeking already. I have to say that a few times because most of us are using our satsang as a way to beat ourselves over the head and say, look, I'm failing at this. I'm not that already. I'm still judging myself. I'm still judging other beings. You could draw an arbitrary line in your life anywhere and compare it to some other point further in the future or in the past. You could be completely conscious of what you actually are, or completely in the darkness about it, thinking you're just this separate being. Still does not change what you are already right now here. There's never going to be a better moment than now to recognize what you actually are. Next time you make a cup of coffee or drink some water, it's not at all water that you're drinking. It's this divine essence of love appearing that way. Next time you have a judgmental thought about yourself, It is the self appearing as that thought. It's not really a thought, actually. And then the evolution continues, the unfoldingness of the body and mind continues, but from a place of joy, from a place of ever unfolding expansion of this three-dimensional sculpture we call the universe, which is also you. And it happens much faster, much easier, because it's sponsored by the self. It's finally able to be facilitated from the real place. All it takes is a willingness to admit that right now, right as you are, right here in this moment, you are that already, completely. Okay, so I have 2 questions that have been emailed in. So I'll take up to another 4 questions online here today as well. I will read these 2 questions out to start off with. If you want to ask a question, you can click on participants at the bottom of the screen and scroll down to the bottom of that section, and it gives you the option to raise your hand so that it'll let me know that you want to ask a question. So I've got these 2 here, which I'll start with. So the first one says, Dear Helen, my problem spiritually is that I have a love-hate relationship towards the self of pure awareness. Often I can't see it as lovingly inclusive and non-rejecting, but as totally indifferent to the havoc and extreme suffering it allows to exist everywhere, given that it's solely responsible for the laws of nature and that such suffering is unnecessary for creatures to function, e.g. after awakening. The self is already awake and completely blissful, so what's it doing using me for a game of hide and seek without my consent? Its multiple personality disorder, voyeurism, sadomasochism, and moral indifference makes it quite repulsive. Yet at other times, I swing into denial mode, just want to put all that negativity aside and can sense the self as being genuinely the only possible absolute source of all that is pure, purity, goodness, beauty, wisdom, and well-being. I'm aware that I'm still stuck at the egoic thinking level here, but whenever I feel unproductive in my simple awareness practice, this negativity reappears. Help. Thank you. So what we have here is 2 egoic perspectives on what the self is. And this quite really well, this question embodies the place that the ego can perceive the self as in its highest and lowest way of seeing it. That sometimes we get this glimpse that it is this beautiful place, this perfection, this divine love that I was talking about, that is the source of all creation and the source of all good things. And then we can see, which I think, we hear a lot of at the moment, why, if it's this perfect self already, why is it appearing as all of this conflict? Why is it appearing as all of this that's going wrong in the world? Why is all this suffering necessary to realize I am the self if I am already the self? So there's a couple of questions in that, and really the questioner is asking how to move beyond these. I think you're asking how to move beyond these 2 perspectives, or perhaps is there a third way to perceive this where I'm not swinging from these extremes? The first thing I want to say about this is you said here, I'm aware that I'm still stuck at the egoic thinking level here. So it's great that you can see that. And then you can ask, okay, is there a higher way to see this? Is there a higher way than just these two perspectives? If neither one of them is enough in itself right now, meaning it's great to see the self as this source of all good things, but I can't keep a hold of that perspective currently. It seems to vanish. It seems to disappear in times of stress. In times when I feel my practice isn't getting anywhere, this negativity comes back in. So is there a higher way than these two? Just that urge to see it is going to begin to bring it about. That neither one of these in and of themselves can be the fullest truth that I can experience as a human being. And just to want to see a higher expression, a higher way, again, not better, just higher, is going to begin to facilitate that. That you don't have to pick either one of these viewpoints, these perspectives, that they're polarized viewpoints that are coming from ego. Again, not wrong or bad, they're just polarized. And where is that place inside me where they are unified into one seeing? Where is that place inside of me where both of these perspectives make sense and there's also something greater than that? How I can understand at times I'd feel this way, times I'd feel that way. But I want a more stable, what you're pointing to here. But whenever I feel unproductive in my simple awareness practice, this negativity reappears. So what you're asking, I think, is for something stable, something that's going to be available, some seeing that doesn't get compromised when life begins to squash us, or when we have a really bad meditation day, or we just wake up feeling a little grumpy, or whatever is happening in that particular moment for us. So just to ask, what is the higher way than this polarizing of viewpoints? Where is the point where everything is unified inside? And you can begin to just, even that is an opening, that I'm not limited to these two options of seeing the self, myself is okay, but I'd like something that doesn't change. Not making the egoic perspective wrong. It's just limited in that it can only polarize like this. It can only have these two opposites. It cannot see the fullness that's behind that completely. And also, just lastly, before I move to the second question here, just to this negativity seems to arise when you feel unproductive in your practice, that your practice isn't working as you'd like it to, whatever that practice is. You stated here a simple awareness meditation. Have a look at what you're trying to achieve from your practice. If, like we said this morning already, you're trying to get to some place you feel you're not already at, then that practice has to be unproductive. You cannot arrive at somewhere you already are. And your meditation will keep reaffirming this to you. You have to keep failing to arrive at where you already are, because the effort to get there is what's disturbing your meditation. The effort to become the self, or embody the self, or realize that is what's disturbing you. You're already embodying the self, appearing as this seeker that's frustrated in this moment trying to get to that. You are the self appearing as the seeker right now with all of its perceived flaws. You don't have any, by the way, but you might think you do. So where are you trying to get to in your practice? And is it bound to fail in a way, as my practice failed me eventually? Every which way I tried to become the self, it failed, absolutely. And eventually I was left with only one option, which was to entertain the idea, the possibility that I might already be where I was trying to get to, even though at that point my life didn't look like it at all. At all. In fact, it looked completely the opposite. So if this negativity is spurned when the practice seems ineffective, not working, then that would suggest to me that you're trying to get somewhere still with the practice. Is the practice a seeing of what's here already, even though it doesn't appear to be anything magical? Can I see? Can I look clearer? And what happens when I abandon any attempts to change myself and instead say, well, maybe I'm only trying to change myself because I haven't fully seen what I actually am clear enough yet? That a deep enough seeing is going to wash away this trying to change myself, trying to become something. And I can embrace the becoming of the body and mind in this ever unfolding expression of the self as the self, without using it as an excuse to say I'm not there yet. What happens when you stop trying to get somewhere completely, as much as you can in this moment? What if you're already what you're looking for, but you haven't looked clearly enough completely? That we're only looking at surface characteristics and saying, look, see, that doesn't look like the Buddha was. This, I don't feel like Krishna did, therefore I can't be it. What if they started from this place too also? And said, what if there isn't anywhere for me to get to already? And spending a bit of time with this question, because it really is going to apply to absolutely everyone that's in satsang. Very good question. Okay, so we'll go to the second one. So the second question says, when one's attention is resting on that which is stable and real, presence, stillness, awareness, consciousness, etc., then a great power takes you over and runs your life for you. What needs to be fixed gets fixed. Solutions magically appear for problems, etc., and living becomes effortless and easy. So then, where does co-creating, visualizing, and manifesting come in? Would not these be ego-based? I must create this, or I should manifest this intention, and so on. One hears remarkable accounts of people healing themselves through visualization or manifesting their dream job, house, or partner, etc. Does one not engage actively or single-pointedly in co-creating anything, but just continues to rest attention on awareness? Then what is of priority or most necessary for one's evolution is what appears for healing, transformation, and transcendence. How does one reconcile allowing or surrender, hands off in brackets, with creating and manifesting, hands on? Many thanks. So another good question. So how do you reconcile consciously creating a life that we would dream of as a human being, and actually just letting go and allowing the unfolding? Well, it's kind of both, isn't it? As a human being, you get to embrace both of these aspects. If we go back to that analogy of the flower, of the plant that's growing from a seed into a flower, there is nothing you can do to make it any more the flower it's going to become. It is already the essence of that contained in the seed. And yet you might still water it and fertilize it and pull up any weeds that are growing around it, and you might prune it and all of those things. So the hands-off approach, as you put it here really, really well, of just stepping back and resting in the real authentic being, is also going to appear as this human being having particular thoughts about, well, you know, it might be better if we do this way. It would be kinder if this thing happened, or whatever way it's expressing itself in that moment. That the hands off and the hands on are the same one being, the same one being expressing itself two different ways. That when I rest in the fullness of my being as that being, that my body and mind feel moved, motivated, driven, perhaps encouraged to act and think and speak in particular ways, to sculpt this manifestation, this three-dimensional manifestation that is my life in a conscious way, that it's the one and the same, that they aren't actually different. It's the question, if you can see your question comes from an assumption that there are two different ways of doing this, which is how it appears to us at first. What if they are the same thing? What if one is the seed and one is the blooming flower, and then neither of them is better than the other? Then there is a relaxation into, I can either consciously create as that source of life itself. I can think and imagine what I would like this life to appear as. I can sculpt it. I can notice what I'm experiencing that I don't like, or what could be better, or what could be a more unlimited expression of love. And then an even higher expression of that creative process could be, that maybe when I try to envision in my human mind what I would like to have happen in this unfoldingness of this three-dimensional sculpture, maybe to try to put that into thoughts and imagination is also limiting it. Maybe if I just step back from framing it any particular way, there's something even better than I could possibly ever imagine. Even if I sat for 10 minutes a day and wrote down my highest experience of my life I would like to achieve, that left alone, when not filtered through some thought process, something even better than that would appear and is possible to appear. That what we call miracles and these miraculous healings, transformations and all of that is actually the natural state of a human being when the self appears as a human being, when it's not filtering itself through any beliefs or any thoughts at all. So more and more there is this kind of relaxing into just being yourself and recognizing that life, the reason I want this particular thing is because life is moving this way anyway. The sculpture is going this way anyway as my life. And that if I want to, I can sculpt that consciously through thoughts. But eventually there'll be some sort of realization inside that says, what happens? What's the highest possibility for this moment to appear as for myself and for everyone, this whole family of humanity? What's the highest possibility when it's not filtered through any thought at all? And what would that look like? And it's as if, if I was to give you a present, if I said I'm going to buy you a gift and I wrapped it up and I said to you, this is the best gift you're ever going to have, and you were really excited, you wanted to open it, and then right as you're going to open it, I told you what it was. And no matter how much you enjoyed opening it then, it wouldn't be the same at all. It really wouldn't be as amazing. What if you had this gift and you had no idea what it was, and when you opened it, it surprised and delighted you and surpassed anything you could imagine inside your mind as to what it actually is? And it's another reason why it's called the present moment, because without any human, not that human imaginings are wrong, but they will limit also the infinite source. And what happens when we step back and just have no idea how this is going to appear? And this is not a stepping back right fully, totally in this moment. Of course, we all want to hold on a little bit until we don't. So we can do this bit by bit. What happens when I just allow my life to appear as much as possible without any imagining at all, and see how beautiful that can become as a human being? Recognizing that life is me also, that it's not something out there that I have to control or try to manipulate. So hopefully you can start from the place where both these perspectives are one, very much like the first question, And then see if there isn't an even higher way, if you want to. What happens when I let go of sculpting completely, and see what happens to my life then. And this takes a trust that develops over time. Just start with it in a small area if you want to. And then your part in this process is simply to recognize, to go through your life, to experience what you experience, to notice what could be better, what could be a more fuller expression of the self. And to simply recognize that feeling. It'd be nice if this thing happened. Sometimes that's as much as the creative process becomes. And from that place, it's a very different experience. Wonderful, wonderful questions. Okay, we'll go to either Ian or Maggie.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I wasn't going to ask a question, but because I feel I'm just repeating the first question, but I've been sat here squirming for about 10 minutes and put my hand, so I thought I might as well put my hand up. Even though I've heard that, what you've said many times about the divine love, the ultimate act is that it can allow any expression, which is, part of me can really see that. And also, it reminds me of some kind of teaching I had from when I was at school about Jesus and suffering and stuff, or he just allows it all, he's so loving, he allows all the suffering, this kind of thing. But it's still something that it doesn't sit, something really doesn't sit well. Something inside me thinks that's, why does it have to be that way? Why can't everyone just, wouldn't it be cool if everyone was just awake when they're born? And what kind of world would that be, if everyone was just awake all the time? Mm-hmm. So why can't it be like that? I know that's a bit of a out there question, but just there's something that whenever I hear that, I've heard it many times, there's still something that inside just gets a little bit kind of feeling, like.
Why does it have to be this kind of, why do we have to go through all this pain and suffering just to finally realize that we were never that? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I thought I really kind of understand some, and the idea that, when we talk about, I used to really struggle with good and evil and this kind of thing, and the devil and this kind of stuff. Again, upbringing, I guess. But once, I remember when you learn that when the self so forgets it's a self and he's very stuck in his ego, then he can do horrible things.
Yeah.
And that again, that when I heard that, again, that made, that's kind of evil, if you like. So it's kind of made sense, if you know what I mean. But there's still something going, why's it got to be like that? Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, it's a good, I see we're going right into the nice, easy questions.
Yeah.
Nice warm up on a Monday morning. So can we recontextualize it? If we say it's evil, are we going to, it depends what you mean by the word evil, doesn't it? If evil is something that is means wrong inside, which the word evil does to a lot of us, and holy or good or righteous, those kind of words mean the opposite. They have those opposite perspectives, don't they, for us?
Yeah.
And we always all of us will bump up against this particular question at some point. So despite what I just said, I'm kind of glad you've asked it. But when we polarize something into right or wrong, then we're trying then to see that which is one with a mechanism that perceives an opposites, with an egoic sense of self that sees two. So it sees me and you as separate beings, and it sees right and wrong as two actual things that can exist separate to each other. This person is evil and this person is, gosh, what's the opposite of it? Completely slipped my mind. I can't. Good, thank you. So it polarizes. This person is evil, and this person is good. And it even does it with awakening. This point in my awakening was terribly painful and awful and just full of suffering. And then I realized I wasn't that. And I never have been that. I've always been the self. And suddenly there was no more suffering. And there's this polarized thing. I'm either suffering or I'm not. Again, there's two opposites. But reality, it isn't made of opposites. It's a continuum and a spectrum. So just like we said before, if I turn the light up here, the dimmer switch, I could turn it right up and it'd be very bright. And we would say that that is good and holy, and, you know, that the archetypical enlightened being would look like this, you know. So, and ego says, that's the one I want, that's it. And the other end, if I turn it right down to almost darkness, that's wrong, that's bad and shouldn't exist. But those two perspectives are coming from the idea that they are actually two different things.
Yeah.
Can you see?
Yeah, I get that.
So it's like saying the rose, the flower, the rose can bloom and exist without the thorns on the stem. And it really can't. They're not different. They're one whole thing. If in fact we could take, you know, if we turn the dimmer switch down on this light here, at what point would it stop being light and actually start being darkness? And is there really such a thing? If I boiled some water in the kettle, and it was steaming and it was boiling, and then we just left it, and we kept measuring the temperature of it as it cooled down and down and down, at what point would it no longer be hot and it would become cold? And isn't there a massive grey area in between where it's warm, tepid, slightly, you know, room temperature, chilly, you know, really cold, and then frozen?
Yeah, yeah.
And can any one of those categories exist without any of the other? Because ego likes to say, of course you can have ice without boiling water, but you really can't. Ice only means something to us, frozen solid, when we have had the perspective of the seeming opposite that isn't really opposite. All of this is to try to say that when we look at the real self, the world, all of this, from that polarized perspective, we can never reconcile it. It will never, just like that first question, you know, here's these two very opposite points of view that I was reading out. Can we ever reconcile it from that place? And maybe it is seeing it from that place that's perpetuating it. You know, because we're all doing it. That's the only option we have until we don't, until we can see there isn't really two opposites of anything. There seems to be, and that's why duality will always seem to be. But what happens when we step back from that? You know, what happens when we look for the place inside where both of those are the same one? Is it really any different, any less the self when I was, let's say my worst human moment that I've ever had, was I any less the self when I was in abject pain and misery? And right now in peace, love and joy and bliss and all of that, am I really any different actually? Or am I just saying that the outer circumstances make me look more like the self? I might be more recognizable as the self to someone trying to seek the self.
Yeah.
But not actually any different.
So nothing's actually changed as such.
Nothing has changed at all. It looks like it. It looks like an awakened being has had some massive transformation where everything gets sorted out and fixed. But it's only the result, the reflection of a clear seeing. When I perceive myself to be a separate being, I'll feel limited, I'll feel small, I'll feel scared, I'll try to control what I can control, I'll try to influence where I can influence. When I see that I'm not that at all, then all of that will fall away because there is nothing to control or anyone. to hurt me or anything like that in reality, but they're not different. It's the same one self thinking about itself at both ends of that spectrum, isn't it? They're not actually different.
So what you say?
Ego can ask this question, but it can't hear the answer, can't receive the answer in its fullest way.
Okay.
And maybe that's the highest purpose of ego or mind, is to ask this kind of intelligent question, and then sort of, okay, what's the highest way this can be answered inside myself?
So if I'm answering it from a sense of good or bad or evil, good or whatever, then it's obviously from the ego, because I'm making one of the judgments.
Yeah, ego tries to take these two opposites that it thinks it sees and put them together somehow and make one. But if you put two things together, you've always got two, haven't you?
Yeah.
If you start from some other seeing where they're already one, or ask that place inside where they're already the same. You know, ego's idea of bringing the opposites together is to find some middle point, almost some composite of them. That's about the best it can kind of understand. And it's not its fault at all. Of course, it's not its fault. It's just like the software on your computer trying to understand the human being that's typing on it.
Yeah.
It's not possible, is it?
Yeah.
Not through any fault of the software. It's just software. Yeah.
Okay.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Good question. Phew, let's hope Bev's one's easier. Whenever you're ready, Bev.
Hi.
Hi. No pressure there.
The first question, I mean, I first had my hand up and I'm like, no, she answered. I put my hand down and then I'm like, I'm kind of like Ian. I'm kind of still wanting to, I guess it's a part of me that feels very straddled. And while I'm doing everything in my situation that's, you know, as a human being, and you would do, as you say, and then there's a part of me that's, you know, knowing everything is the self, or being in the space of knowing absolutely nothing. There's, you know, of course, still this kind of straddle. It's almost like, you know, it reminds me of The Exorcist. It's like the head is spinning and you're like, no, you're the self. You're still the self. You know? But it's like pretty convincing, you know, that this thing is happening. So there's this place of being there. And then there's the other question is what is showing up as the self? Is it unique for the individual? In other words, is whatever it is that I am seeing or am to see, or is this seeing that's for me or that is coming, is it specific for me? In other words, not to go into great detail, but just my daughter and myself, just what's happening with us. Sometimes I wonder, because it feels very tailored sometimes, what's happening, that this seeing is for me, and is there any truth in that? I guess
Absolutely, because you are already that, and so is everyone else you'll meet. There is a kind of an unfolding of whatever is occurring. It is tailor-made for us, isn't it, for our seeing. And when it appears as two human beings in a relationship, whatever type of relationship, it's got this great capacity to utilize both individual expressions to kind of further its growth and its seeing faster, especially when one of those beings is becoming conscious of what it actually is, as you are, you know, so that that nothing is random, nothing is happening accidentally in that way, that everything can be used as part of our awakening, our seeing, and that there isn't really anything that could happen outside of that. Meaning, if you can have the eyes to see, so to speak, that this is showing you something, just as every human being is an individual and unique expression, but not separate. So every seeing is individual and unique for that human being. It's something that's profoundly important to you, and maybe life-changing when you see it. For somebody else might be, well, that's no big deal, you know, and vice versa. So the two of you aren't really two, as you know, but there's two expressions coming together to create this possibility for a seeing, an epiphany, and a moment of realization that isn't possible for either one of you on your own. How each one of you receives that, one of you will receive it as a separate being, the other one will receive that seeing as a, you know, sort of an awakening expression of the self. Mm-hmm. But it creates, it's perfect in that moment for both of you. Just like right now in this satsang, everyone's going to take what they take from the sum totality of this satsang in the individual way that it suits them, that it helps their growth. And yet there is also this whole thing that's happening between all of us that are in this satsang collectively. And that's constantly playing out in human relationships as well. You know, that kind of, how it actually plays out is the friction between you both, where you rub each other up the wrong way or something like that, you know, to have a, in the ordinary human moments of, yeah, okay, here we go again type of thing, you know. So does that help? Does that kind of?
It does. I just have to, I feel like because I know there's something here that feels kind of specific, my mind wants to figure it out. And yeah. I think that's also where I get stuck, because my mind is like, you know, we can figure out what this is so we can be done with it. You know what I mean? So just, I think staying in the place of not knowing.
Again, don't make it one or the other. Don't, you know, be open to see some seeing, and maybe your mind can help also by figuring it out. Maybe they're both the same way, you know, two different ways of approaching the same thing, and maybe both of those are great. Okay. And even if you have some seeing, some epiphany, then it may take a thought process to actually implement that. You know, it may take a human moment, you know, of okay, well, how do I best go about living as what I've just seen? You know, there's nothing wrong with thoughts in that respect, is there, to kind of facilitate. It's got to come through the human vehicle, you know, the human being, and all that entails.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Lovely. So we'll take these last two questions and then we'll leave it there. So we'll go to Sophie.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me now?
I can, yep.
Sorry. Hi, thank you.
Hi.
This is a really amazing satsang, dealing with everything. And what you were saying about this, that real acknowledging or seeing the love as everything, and yes, it does trigger what these questions are bringing, of the suffering and the difficulties that we go through in our human lives. And I think I just feel like there's this desire to clear there's a part of me that feels that all the suffering needs some kind of justification, like I've gone through all this, or I still am suffering, and therefore, you know, you hear this, that only through suffering does an awakening, it helps facilitate awakening. It's like the way of the cross, or through difficulty humans wake up. Mm-hmm. And the mind gets hold of that and tries to use it in some way to justify, well, I've been through all this suffering, therefore therefore awakening needs to be the outcome of that, because it's like the kind of, that's not the case, because what you're saying is that suffering is just love expressing itself in that moment as however it's expressing. And if it's suffering, it's suffering. It's not going anywhere. It's not leading to anything other than what it is in that moment.
Yeah, but it's also, if you look at suffering as a, human suffering as a as a symptom of our misperception of what we are. And that our suffering will continue until we have fully, clearly seen enough times what we actually are, for that to begin to reflect into the kind of opposite experience of suffering. You know, so a sense of well-being, a sense of feeling adequate and whole, and all of that. That the suffering is not the cause of realization. It's not going to get me to clear seeing, but it is going to make me less and less willing to perceive myself in the same old way as a limited being, as a finite, separate being that's born and is going to die at some point. So it's not kind of, suffering leads to liberation in that way, but it's not the cause of it. It's just we get so tired eventually of seeing the same old suffering happening from the same old misperceptions of ourselves. So in any moment I see that I'm already the perfect expression of the one being, I won't be able to suffer. But the next moment, I might go back into suffering, into misperception out of habit. So if I keep seeing, then I'm going to eventually lose my ability to suffer. But it's not the suffering that's causing, because we've all seen what happens when human beings think that by treating, by suffering is holy or something. And we've had many expressions of what happens then, and that's not, it's always, the answer is always going to be kindness and love to ourselves, isn't it? Maybe if I'm suffering still, it's just a sign that I haven't seen fully enough times to completely override this tendency inside myself to imagine that I'm inherently flawed or something like that. There's something missing that I need to get and add on to me or become or something like that. That's those kind of ideas are the real root of human suffering. And all behavior comes from that place that we would like to see different about ourselves and others. So if you look at suffering as a symptom of misperception, it's kind of easier to contextualize it then. Does that help? Or?
It does help. I'll listen to it, what you've just said again, and but also I just want to come to some peace around this pathway that seems to have suffering as its focus.
If you got let's say you got measles, okay, and you came out in spots all over, and you went to the doctor and they said this is the medication you need to, this is what you need to do to make this better. You wouldn't say that the spots were getting you anywhere, would you? You wouldn't say that was actually achieving anything having them, but you would say that they're evidence of some deeper thing inside that needs treating, that needs looking at. So we can begin to come to that understanding. It's not the best analogy, but we can say, okay, my suffering as a human being is evidence of the fact that I perhaps still could see myself even clearer, even deeper, to see what I actually am. Even when I've seen that there is this great self, I can still be using that, as a way to beat myself over the head that I'm not already living as that, something like that. I can still be suffering even from that place. And there's an even deeper seeing in which I am willing to admit eventually that right where I am right now is already it. That nothing that can change in the outer world or the inner world is going to make me any more the self than I am already in this moment. And that any suffering at all that's still happening is just a symptom or a sign that seeing could deepen, could be fuller, could flower more inside. Not as a sign that I'm wrong or unawakened or any of that stuff.
And the fact that life seems to get harder, more difficult. You face more challenges on the path, or, you know, in my experience through, you know, teacher, that life does get a lot harder in ways you wouldn't have expected.
Yeah.
Then that's there needs, you know, that's what I just want to be okay with. It's not that, that's the sense of it being just helping to deepen in the seeing of who I am.
Yeah.
Because of the
whatever is happening in our outer world, our inner world, is a reflection of the beliefs that we're still holding inside. You know, it's a reflection, it's a mirror. And so as we deepen in our commitment to go beyond these beliefs, to not have any limitation upon our being, we can become so much more aware of those showing up to us. But it doesn't mean it's any harder to transcend those. You know, that any idea I have about myself, it is never ultimately true, never was ultimately true. So that we can feel in one way that more is being asked of us on the pathway the further we get. But if our life is oriented from where I said at the start of all of this morning, that I have come back to heal this stuff. I am here to heal all the misperceptions I've gathered along the way about myself and everyone else that I have inside myself. That then this is kind of allowing for this. I can't heal them until I see what they are and that they're no longer true. And we've had them inside us, and we wouldn't know that they're there, these misperceptions about ourselves, until they begin to feel just too limiting, completely painful. You know, some too tight, 6 sizes too small for us now. These beliefs that we're wearing, you can see, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Just look at this one idea that suffering is causing you to wake up, because it's not. It's only a reflection of where we're holding limiting ideas about ourselves or other beings. Yeah. And suffering does stop upon a clear seeing, but nothing's been caused. It's just, I've really just seen what I am actually, full enough, deep enough this time that I can't hold on to those old ideas anymore. That's why the suffering stops. Not because the suffering's done something and got you somewhere and now you're there, you know, you've arrived, type of thing. Lovely.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Take care.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll go to the last question. I'm really sorry. I don't know how to pronounce your name. If you wouldn't mind telling me how to pronounce your name. I think you're still muted. There we go. Okay, can you hear me?
My name is Junaid.
Sorry, just say that again. Just say that again a little slower so I can.
Yeah, my name is Junaid from Turkey.
Nice to meet you.
From Middle East. Nice to meet you. And especially my wife is fond of you. Okay, she of ego. Okay, we each have ego, but some says the ego is a friend, protector, and others says ego is an enemy. And for me, it's like a shop in my mind, selling objects. About there is a department of desires, fears, politics, and romance, everything. And the owner of the shop, my ego, is trying to sell something all the time, but I am reluctant to buy anything because I know it will cause boredom or suffering. Okay, and what is your relationship or definition of the right relationship with ego? Do you still have fears, desires? Thank you.
That's a very good question. Really, the whole process was falling back in love with, you know, if there's that salesman that's trying to sell us something that we don't want, and we keep going and buying those ideas that cost us, as you said so well, suffering, that cause suffering, these ideas. We can either avoid that shop, that store, out of fear, and say that's just, I don't kind of want to go there. But as it deepened for me, there was a kind of seeing that I can choose not to shop there out of respect for my, you know, wanting to experience something better without making that way wrong. I can kind of try on these beliefs that make me feel limited, make me feel restricted, make me feel really sad or lonely or scared, that type of thing. Or I can try without any beliefs and see how that feels. And I don't have to make either one right or wrong. One just feels better and it's more expansive, and the other one feels more limited and restricted. And I can think about myself as a limited being, as a someone, or I can experience myself as unlimited and infinite, and that they aren't. The sort of best way I ended up holding ego is just thanks, but no thanks. You know, I'd rather experience the fullness of my being now. I've had enough. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. For everyone that's still doing it, it's fine. But I'd rather feel inside this deeper place of my being, you know, some kind of sense of what's it like to not wear any beliefs at all? What's that like? You know, that fullness inside. There are sometimes still momentary desires that pop up of how things could expand in that manifestation, as we were talking about. Every now and again, some old fragment of ego, you know, some momentary anger or something might pop up, but it's just a, would you like to try this? And it's a, no thanks, you know, it's fine, you know, kind of from that place, you know, rather than go, oh, I can't, you know, I don't want to, don't come near me, you know, as we all do at first, and I used to do. It's kind of that I've just kind of, you get to that point where I'm just had enough of experiencing myself in a limited way. I'm not going to make it wrong. I just don't want to do that anymore. It's a different attitude, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you.
Good, good. Does that help to kind of hold it in a different light?
That's nowadays we are trying to live in just non-thought awareness, thought-free awareness. Okay.
Yeah.
But still, we are caught by the object seller, and sometimes, and especially in politics, political ideas. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are very still powerful.
Yeah.
But to refute the object seller's idea, I am talking to him, everything is as it should be, okay, there is a karmic needs, okay, all that stuff, okay, to canceling one thought with another, okay, I'm trying to balance out the thoughts, and then I become free from the object seller and try to live in that thought-free awareness again. That is my process, okay?
It's very, very common. It was like that for me. And then I stopped being afraid of the seller. You know, I just kind of eventually, what have you got to say to me today? Or what are you going to try and sell me today? And then, I can see I would have bought that before. I would have purchased it, but now you know, nah, it's okay, thanks, you know, but not to be afraid of it when it comes up. You know, something is going to come up. And we all have areas of our life where we still engage, where we still go and buy these things. If we can sort of forgive ourselves that it's not going to be a sudden realization in that suddenly I stop buying any thoughts at all. It's going to be a gradual switch over where I'd like to, more and more of my life I'm experiencing from this unlimited free place and less from this conditioned place, you know, inside myself. So wherever we're still picking up thoughts, we're still picking up thoughts. It doesn't mean we're any less the self. It's just an old habit that's fading bit by bit each day, isn't it? More and more. And it'll fade faster if we're just kind of, okay, I did that there, you know, for a whole day I picked up this thought or that thought, or, you know, it doesn't mean I'm any less authentically the self. I'm just in this switch over, experiencing myself more and more as the unlimited, infinite expression rather than this conditioned thing. And it's a much easier way to, you're also a human being too. You're also appearing as a human being. And in that, there is some time and process and changing over of the way, you know, it takes a little time to change over. And certain thoughts are very tempting. And he says, this thought is really cheap. You can buy this one, and I'll give you 10 more as well for free if you buy this one, you know, or 100 more. And you kind of, if you pick it up, if you go home with that thought, so what? It doesn't mean you've done anything wrong, does it? It's just, okay, maybe next time I won't, you know, and that's the best place to hold it from, you know, then, oh, why have I done that? You know, and then we're kind of back into that suffering again, aren't we? So, right, if I suddenly started believing something about myself and then realized, well, wait, that's not true. It wouldn't be afterwards, I wouldn't be able to beat myself up over it. It was just like, oh, wow, I picked up some thoughts for an hour. That was strange, you know, an interesting hour. Yeah. It's a different way. Same thing might happen, but a different way of holding it inside yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Very good question.
For me, it's like a friend, but not enemy. A limited version of myself, as if ego is my limited version of myself. But someone is ignorant.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Ignorant.
And you can
all by this, yeah.
Hopefully you can see that it is ignorant of the real nature of you, and it does feel ego. It does feel what it's saying is true because it can't see the fullness of what you are. It can only see what it sees, you know. So we don't need to say it's wrong, or like you said so well, it's just limited. And just like you know, when your old phone starts to break down, you get a new phone, you get an upgrade. You don't go shouting at the old phone saying, you're bad, you're wrong. You know, it's just time for a new upgrade, isn't it? On how you see yourself. And you can never convince ego of what the truth is, but you don't need to. You can just go, it's limited, it cannot see reality. And I don't have to fight with it because of that. It's, you know.
Thank you, Helen.
It was
very illuminating.
Lovely to meet you both. Yeah, lovely. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. We shall leave it there for today. Thank you very much for joining me. Namaste.